You're listening to 15 Minutes, where we feature community leaders sharing what the rest of us should know but likely don't.
Hello, everyone. Michael Renfro here. I'm the host of 15 Minutes, where we talk with top-notch law firms and lawyers about what it takes to grow a successful law firm, law practice, whatever you would like to call it. We are brought to you by the episode, and every episode is going to be brought to you by Gladiator Law Marketing, where we deliver tailor-made services to help you accomplish your objectives and maximize your growth potential. To have a successful marketing campaign and make sure you're getting the best ROI, your firm really needs to have, guaranteed almost always, a better website and better content than the competitor. At Gladiator Law Marketing, we use artificial intelligence as well as machine learning and decades of experience to outperform the competition. To learn more, if you're interested, please go to gladiatorlawmarketing.com or schedule a free, where you can schedule a free consultation, or you can reach out to me directly, Michael, M-I-C-H, Alpha Echo Lima at gladiatorlawmarketing.com, and I can schedule it for you. Anyway, so let's get right into it. Today's guest is quite an accomplished criminal defense attorney in Orlando. He's actually been a guest on a previous show that we did. And quite frankly, I always love talking to him. And I won't give a whole lot more gloating other than to say, Mike Piniella, it is a pleasure to have you back on our new show and help us kick this one off. And as usual, always love having you, man.
Thanks, Michael. Glad to be here.
Thank you, sir. So funny that we have the same first name. You know how, just on a side note, have you ever, with me, I have become friends with so many more Michaels than other names. Has that been the case for you? Have you found that to be easier just right off the bat if you talk to someone?
You say it's funny that we have the same name. I think it's like 1 out of every 3 men that are 30 years or older have this name. So,
oh yeah, no, absolutely. Which is why I think I've always, we had the number one name for like 40 something years running, literally.
And I'm just excited about the fact that that doesn't exist anymore. My kids are in a class without any Michaels. Oh, so I feel like I was the creative one to name them David and John. So all of a sudden I'm the unique one.
Yeah, well, you've already heard mine, but I went even further to make sure that they were. I didn't want to carry on any of the tradition of Michael or any of the past Renfro names, quite frankly. So they got Forest, Skylar, River, and Fire. So they all still.
You know what I'm saying? And coincidentally, there's 4 kids in my my oldest son's class, and those are their names. So, but he's the only David.
That's awesome. And you mentioned the school thing. On a side note, growing up, there was a minimum of at least 2 of us in every single class. And I maxed out to one class had 5 Michaels in it. 5 in one class. Ridiculous. I mean, it was a class of 34, but you're still talking about a significant percentage of the population had the same first name. So anyway, we're gonna get right into it.
The bottom line, we're not right into it. When something is the best, it works. So.
Oh yeah, man! I love it. Nice hit for us, especially with the name. And it's funny because I've gone by Michael, Mikey, Mike, Mick, Mitch, even Mickey. I mean, just about every form and fashion. And now I'm back to just going by Michael or Mike. One or the other. That's the 2 that I've come down to. So
Mickey.
Yeah, well, I tried to defy all the. I tried to get as far away from Michael as I could. And then my father called me Mikey. Which, quite frankly, between you and me, I couldn't stand being called Mikey. Now, by the time I got to be in my 20s and was going by Mick, for someone to call me Mickey, considering my past, it kind of felt perfect at the time.
All right.
Plus, I have Scotch Irish in me. So, moving on, let's get right into it. Obviously, we want to showcase a little bit, so we're going to do a little interview here of you, and I'll just get right into it. So, how did you get started, Mike?
Well, my parents, I attribute it to this. When I was 12, my parents threw a pretty nasty divorce, and it lasted for 4 years and whatnot. And the way that I perceived that as a young kid was that my mom, was just getting screwed, and she was in a lot of pain. And I just remember feeling as a kid, I want to do whatever I can to help this and to stop this pain.
Right.
So I devoted my life to becoming an attorney at like a really young age. to be able to hopefully be a voice for people like her in the future.
Yeah.
And so that's what set me on that path. And I just kept going on that until this moment.
It's funny, and I say this because obviously, I work with nothing but attorneys, but more often than not, it's almost always a story, particularly with criminal defense. It ends up being a story where someone saw too much injustice going on and felt that they needed to learn what it took to fight for justice. Quite frankly, on I know for you it was family, obviously, and I know you also don't you do some family and take those cases?
I do.
From time to time?
Yeah. Our main practice areas are criminal defense and family. I say criminal, family, and her friends. So because they intersect so often, with violence and injunctions and all kinds of things.
Yeah, no, I not only that, but quite frankly, if I was living in Florida and I, now that I know you and I get hit by a car, I'd probably come to you just because I think you would fight harder than anybody. I know you're a friend, you might not know about it, but I would definitely. You're the kind of guy that I would put almost any trust in, and I say that this is not just a pump up for Mike. We have become absolutely close friends. I'll say this because I don't know if it's been said before well, I know it hasn't on this show, but when Mike came on board, at like 1:00 in the morning or something like that. His time over a couple of drinks and us finally being able to get together because he's so damn busy. But having said that, we have become close friends, and I know that you are, a spectacular attorney, and I would always come. I've already come to you how many times for advice? At least twice in the last 2 years. So
I appreciate that, man. What's funny about justice, right? Is it is a weird thing because what is justice for one person,
right,
is absolutely horrifying for another in the same.
Isn't that the karma? Isn't that? I mean, that's the yin and the yang of it. If you're, and I'm not saying that anybody is necessarily being being served unjust on that side, and I know they feel it. We like to think of it that most of the time we believe the case comes out the way it's supposed to, right? But that means there's always a loser in every single case. Every time you go in front of a judge, even if you don't get to the judge, every time you have a case, there's two sides. And that means that somebody is going to lose and feel like they lost out on what they, even if it's stupid stuff like personal injury, that insurance guy, what are they called? I'm talking about for the insurance companies, the investigator, but they have a particular name for it. Yeah, the adjuster. Guaranteed when he loses, he feels slighted personally. It's his job. Right?
I just think that in some cases it's pretty clear
absolutely.
that someone is getting railroaded, and in others it's a little bit more gray. And it doesn't
mean that they don't feel it though.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I was saying. Even in the ones, no, I completely agree with you. All I was adding is that even the ones that feel like, that you and I and everybody else, and let's say just easily 99.9% of the world would go, yeah, that's clearly there, the decision is right. The person that's losing never feels that way, regardless, especially the attorney on the other side. Let me just say that, because they always have another one of you guys on the other side fighting, right?
Not always.
Well, no, that's true. Yes, I guess not always. So where did you get the idea? I guess that really kind of answers that, where you got the idea of becoming an attorney, or does that? Is that, I mean, that's where it started, but where did you technically?
I mean, that was it. And from there, I was just sort of off to the races. It just got ingrained in my brain that this is
so
what
nobody said it to you, just thought came from that.
I just felt, and for better or for worse, and whatever that ended up meaning for me in my life, I just felt very strongly and very passionate about the situation that I perceived my family to be in.
Yeah.
And there was just no question that that's what I was going to do. All the way through middle school and high school, that was the goal. Everything.
Wow. No shit. You really knew that like most people, I just say that because let's face it, most people get out of college and even with a degree and they haven't figured out what they're going to do with their lives. Would you've lived long enough and seen a lot of your friends. Wouldn't you agree with that? A lot of people get out of college and still don't know what they're going to do. And you knew.
I have a lot of friends that got out of law school and didn't know what they were.
Yeah. But you literally knew by middle school before even getting.
Yeah. And I think that's also okay.
That's a lot of drive.
It is. It can also be a lot of pressure that,
Did you put a lot of pressure on yourself because of that? Like the whole time?
Yeah. Oh yeah, because you got to think about it like this: like living up to an expectation of somehow being able to fix something that I can't fix, because what happened in the past happened. And I
Right. You
was
can't, like, obviously you got into it because of that, but you can't go back and make it right. What happened to your mother?
no, no. So,
Right.
but the drive to somehow do whatever I could, um, to make it right, even if that's helping other people or being, pursuing this field or whatever it was. Yeah, I mean that's a pretty heavy burden to carry.
Well, I mean, it is kind of
Starting at 12.
yeah, I mean,
And
I
I'm
won't get
not
it.
saying
This is
that.
not about
I
me.
know that I full disclosure, I looked at your questions ahead of time, so I know that.
Yeah, of course.
I'll just get to it now because some of the other questions.
Well, I was about to lead into, why don't you go ahead and tell, I mean, how did that play into the early days?
I just think that what happens a lot of times, for at least for me and for some of my friends and whatever, people that choose this profession, especially in the field of criminal defense, where it's
Right.
you're the only thing that person has.
Right. You're their last line of defense from doing time or
them in the chopping
restitution,
block.
whatever.
It's you, and you're up here, doing everything you can to defend them against the wheels of a governmental entity, whatever the situation is, where, whether it's a state case, a federal case, even if it's an administrative thing, whatever. And, and that's an incredible responsibility. And when it's a family law case, and like yesterday, I was in extremely heavy family law litigation with somebody. I represent the father who has the legal right
divorce, I'm assuming, or custody.
It's the divorce has long since happened, but his, basically the mother of the child has taken the child and taken her and hidden her for 20 months, even though my guy has the
How
right.
old's the child?
8 now, 6 when
So
she was taken.
He's missed, you said 20 months. So he's possibly missed guaranteed 1, maybe 2 birthdays already.
Yeah, and he actually has the superior legal position. It's just the way it was done. So you better believe that's the most important thing to his life. I say all this to say that I think that if you're going to do a good job in this job, then you need to take it seriously and you need to empathize with how serious these situations are for your clients. But if you don't have balance in your own life as an attorney, in a way to sort of,
separate.
In some ways, yeah, then I think it can become extraordinarily overwhelming and you experience burnout.
Yeah, I want to actually, it's not one of our planned questions, so I hope you don't mind if I go off script, just because it brings to light something that I think about. And I say this because there's, so here's a little bit of a segue, but it's the reality of it. Google looks at you guys, and I'm talking about attorneys and lawyers, that is clearly different than and they put you in the same group as like doctors and accountants, guys that do, financial guys, brokers and that kind of thing. They put you all in that same thing because there's that acronym. I think I even told you about it: your life, your money. Right. And the funny thing is Google only mentions you guys. So I say that because it's obviously, how much an effect you have on someone's life, and in particularly many times their money, because let's face it, even if it's a crime, they're going to end up doing lots of financial restitution if they do time at all. There's going to be probation. There's going to be other things, whatever. There's typically fines involved.
Expensive proposition. Yeah.
Yeah. So your money, your life, when you have that kind of pressure, because, psychiatrists, those are doctors and therapists, they're in those same, they all have heavy burnout. And what I mean by that is it doesn't take long that you can meet a doctor and you can tell he's burned out. Yeah, he's still practicing, but he's lost that human touch, right? He's so burned out that he's so far removed that this is a job and there's no more humanity in it. I bet you see that as often. And I mean, I know you work with a ton of attorneys, so I'm not asking you to point anyone out, but I bet you see that in your own world a lot, where that guys, it's just a job for them at this point, and there's no more. The fight isn't the same as when they were 25.
This is why I'm saying. This is why I'm saying it's really important as an attorney or really so many professions. I don't really care what you're doing, but if you're in the if you're in a people serving profession where it matters, then if you don't have your, life in order,
You can't serve your clients well.
It's just, you're not going to be doing as effective of a job as you could, because either, yeah, you're going to be too invested and you can't think objectively about it, which is a problem for a lawyer, or you're not going to care, and then you're just going to suck.
Totally remove yourself.
So
right.
A friend of mine says this, especially for criminal defense attorneys, and I'm going to butcher her quote, but it's something to this extent. There's two times in a criminal defense attorney's life when they should quit. One is when they're standing next to their client and he's sentenced to prison, and it's so overwhelming for the lawyer that they can't, that it takes an extraordinary emotional, physical toll.
Right, that they take a big hit, or emotionally,
or the exact same thing, and the lawyer doesn't care.
So literally now you're talking. Now I see what you're saying.
Those are the two times that a criminal defense attorney should
right.
Stop.
That's a fine line that you have to skate, though, in order to be an effective attorney.
Yeah, it is, and I'm just telling you, I think that comes from experiencing burnout. Unless you just never cared in the first place.
Right.
I think there's many attorneys that just aren't that good. I've just seen that like a lot.
Well, I mean, come on, dude. I'm not going to call anything out, but I mean, obviously we know that you can see it. You can see it in life. I mean, I've had to use every kind of attorney there is legitimately, except for an elder attorney. And what I mean by that is, I'm not elderly and I haven't had to deal with anything in that form, but business, tax, personal injury, criminal defense, family, bankruptcy. I've literally dealt with all those cats, and every single practice area you can meet. I mean, I do an interview process just like anybody else, right? So when I'm looking for an attorney, I'm not talking to just one guy or one lady. I'm talking to multiple people and getting opinions, and you can tell the ones that still have enough vested that they care. They don't not care, right? But they also understand that they have, 25, 35, maybe even 100 more clients that they also have to care about, plus their own family, their own lives. And you can, when you're interviewing, you tend to look for those guys, at least I do, which kind of, gives me an opportunity to go back into the next question just to move us forward, because it was only supposed to be 15 minutes, but I could talk to you forever. Biggest turning points in your career? Or point, if there was one.
Well, when I was in law school, the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman case happened. That shooting took place, and Trayvon was unfortunately killed.
Right.
And I, again, at that point, I'd already been working at a prestigious criminal defense law firm.
So you're well through school, well through you were no longer wet behind the ears, let's just say.
Well, I was new. I was a law student, but I was lucky enough to get a pretty great position at a respected defense firm. And this thing happened. And I knew at that point I wanted to do criminal defense. Everything that when I was younger about wanting to be a lawyer and taking all those passions, I had learned in college by sharing a hall with the federal public defenders and seeing them like in the garage and in the hallway or in the bathroom. I'd ask them. I knew I was going to be going to law school, and I'd ask them, how do you sleep at night? Or I'd say, would you sleep? These are like the federal defenders. These are like as good. I love that. That's your kid, by the way. I love that. See, that's a life in balance. Yeah. Or like I'd ask these defenders.
I forgot to turn on my on-air sign at like a doofus today, because normally they would know, I have a little neon sign. So.
I'd ask these guys like, would you still defend him if you knew he was guilty, or whatever.
Right.
And it's like, these are like the best, like some of the best attorneys in the country, at the federal system,
right.
Defending indigent people that really need help. And it was through conversations with two of these guys, a guy named Don West and a guy named James Smith. And they both sort of like talked to me and explained what criminal attorneys do. Like it was a concept I just didn't understand.
On both sides, obviously, not just one, but
No, I don't care about the other side. I'm talking about criminal defense attorneys. And
I only say that. I'm sorry. I only say that because I know a lot of criminal guys come from working in the DA first.
Yeah, whatever. I didn't do that. And it's like, oh, well, if you don't work at the prosecutor's office first, are you ever going to be successful? And I had all this.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah. Don't take me the wrong way at all, Mike. I don't think that is a prerequisite. I just think a lot of people go that way.
And I think it's smart. I think it's good. I have a lot of respect for prosecutors. I'm just saying that wasn't in these conversations. That wasn't what I was talking about.
Okay. My bad.
They were explaining what a criminal defense attorney does.
Just purely for defense.
Didn't understand. That's all.
When you said, I apologize. I don't think I heard defense. I think I just heard you say criminal. So I was thinking you were meaning.
I did say criminal.
That's why. And I apologize. I got confused because all I was thinking was you were given the balance of, understand. But now I understand this was purely.
I just thought criminal defense attorneys were bad guys.
You did? Really?
Guys and girls, because I thought that they were defending bad people.
Always. And
so if you're defending bad people, why would you do that? And it was through it was a genuine thought. I mean, yeah. I'm a Christian. I am serious about my faith. I really thought that somehow even being a defense attorney was unchristian.
Well, movies like Big Chill didn't help it any, right? Do you remember Big Chill? The Big Chill. She's like, do you remember she was literally one of the ones we're talking about? I think she worked in the DA's office but then went out there to fight. And she's like, I'm not fighting for the righteous. I'm fighting for dirtbags and losers. That didn't help y'all's plight any back in the day.
Well, luckily I have a different opinion now. It was from those conversations with those guys back in college. So by the time I was in law school, I was already on the path that, wait, this is what I was talking about. This is when I was that 12-year-old, like, be the voice for the voiceless, stand up for the person that truly needs it the most. Right. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're saying somebody's not guilty of something when they are, although sometimes that's true.
Well, and many times though, we already know that sometimes your guilt, it all entails the circumstances and all the facts and all the different things. Like you might be guilty on one hand, but it might have been a guilt that you had to perform in order to whatever the case may be, especially if it's like self-defense or something. You know what I'm saying? Like
maybe if you understood the entire person and where they were coming from at the time, perhaps 10 years in prison doesn't make any sense. Maybe something else does. So anyway, the question was about turning points. I'm just saying, when I was in law school, that case had happened. I was already on the track to be doing criminal defense work. And I, like everybody else, was absolutely, because I saw the media, I was like, man, this George Zimmerman, just racist murderer, kid killer. And I was just like, didn't really want anything to do with it until I saw the main attorney on TV, the first attorney, Mark O'Mara, talking about it. Right. And this was a guy that emulated who I wanted to be, because I was already doing wanting to be a criminal defense attorney. And I saw him, and it absolutely changed my entire perspective on what actually happened in that case from Gainesville. Like I was just like watching TV and I saw that.
Gotcha.
So I decided whatever I needed to do, I needed to work on that case.
No, that's cool. That's cool. I'm gonna ask these next ones just because I know we're getting long. So big milestone. I think I have a guess on this one, but would your biggest milestone be the case a couple of years ago that changed, or is there a different one?
No, I would say that one. The only reason I went into I was a public defender for a minute too, and that was my favorite job I ever had. And the only reason I left that office was to take that case. This is a guy who was a retired GM mechanic that allowed his adult niece, to live with him.
Forrester. Dorosset. Thank you.
Dorosset with a D.
Dorosset.
And
always mangle it.
And the bottom line is, she had some problems and but he sort of took her in because she had nowhere else to go.
Right.
And the police decided to sting her on a misdemeanor.
Yeah.
And my guy had nothing to do with it, was in the back room eating meatloaf when plainclothes officers showed up and basically ripped her out of her house while she was screaming. They didn't have a warrant or anything. So they.
And I will add this just because I know this case, the story. Please feel free, to look up, do a search for Mike Piniella, and you can find a lot of information. It's not hard. Literally, you were in the news, and I'll just give this kudos to you. But he changed the the stand your ground, the law as it sits now, is due to Mike and his efforts and his team in that case. So that was an awesome.
Certain aspects of that law were definitely clarified for homeowners and what self-defense was in the opinion.
Yeah, I'm not saying you wrote the whole law, but the way a law sits now, you definitely have you changed it forever. Your case put things in there that are now part of the law. So I think that's pretty awesome. I would imagine that's kind of true for our next question. Is that what gave you the most traction as far as, results wise, or was it something else that gave you more traction to get into that position?
It wasn't. I took that case pretty much for free because the public defender's office wouldn't take it. Basically, the uncle comes out, sees her being kidnapped in the night, shoots a warning shot, thinking that his niece is being kidnapped. Tragically, they all turn out to be cops and they just shoot him. He shoots back. Wow. Everyone survives by the grace of God, but they charge my guy with 3 counts of attempted first-degree premeditated murder of a law enforcement officer, all because of a botched thing in the first place. Anyway, it took 4 years, but he's now been declared immune from prosecution that he acted lawfully.
That's awesome.
But the thing is, we had to step out on faith and open the practice in the first place to take that with like no money. So actually, we had to do a lot of other things in order to get traction, just to keep the lights on while we were doing that.
So you already, just to be clear, from my understanding, you already were working that case before I met you.
Yeah,
that was a case you worked for. What, 2.5, 3 years? Was it 4? Okay, yeah, cool.
Well,
let me ask you this. In direct to that, I would imagine that you probably had one. And what I mean by that is setbacks are usually, 2 steps back, 5 steps forward kind of thing, right? So in that way of thinking, what would say is your biggest pitfall or mistake that gave you the most traction afterwards? You know what I mean? That you learned the most from, if you will.
I ended up having to leave a position that I loved because of not understanding my place and my role in that organization. A lot of pride, too much, too early. And
I think we're all like that, brother.
I didn't understand it at the time because I was experiencing a lot of pride and still struggle with that to some degree, certainly, but I think about it a lot now. And so, I ended up having to change where I was working and all kinds of things that way because I think my attitude wasn't right. And I think that I thought that I knew more.
Did you know that at the time, or did you see that afterwards as a reflection?
In hindsight, I really thought that I knew more than I did. I acted in a way that wasn't humble.
How old were you? Just out of curiosity, what age?
Right out of, a couple years out of law school.
So mid-20s, late 20s, maybe mid-20s, late 20s, somewhere.
Late 20s.
Yeah. All I can say, man, to that is God has you mentioned it, and obviously I've never hidden it, but God has a way of, if you are of God, right, and listening to the signs, then he has a way, has a way of humbling you to bring you back to reality, right? It happened to me around the same time, and I've told you that story, but right around 26, I had a huge life-altering, life-changing event that was the worst at the time. But then 2 years later, my twins were born. So,
it's funny. That's amazing. And I think the perspective has a lot to do with it, how we react to situations. There's certainly been very bad things that have happened in my life due to my own actions and poor decisions.
Right.
And, beyond what I'm talking about right now. But what's interesting is that you're right. The Bible says that God disciplines those he loves. And
how would you know a great day without the consequences of a bad,
It also says in Romans 8:28 that we know that all things work together for the good of those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. And here's the thing. I think a lot of people get that verse wrong, and they just think everything that happens is somehow God's will. But that's not what that verse says. It says that all things, even really, really bad things that happen, God can turn that for good. And I think
they always do. I think a lot of it has to do, but they always do, Mike. I've actually had these conversations so many times. It's I know it sounds almost repetitive in preaching, but one of the greatest moments in my life was shortly after my wife was hit. I just have to share this because you said that, and I had a revelation, if you will, that I could not think of one bad instance, the most horrible times in my life that were not literally the catalyst to greater events. If they hadn't happened, then the spectacular things wouldn't come. And that's what makes it, it's just how it works. Like, again, I completely repeat it and continue to say it. How could you possibly know a good day if you haven't experienced the bad? If everything was perfect, good moments wouldn't feel that great.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's a great perspective to have. I think that there's a lot of wisdom there. And I think that sometimes really bad things happen and you don't necessarily see that light at the end of the tunnel.
No, you can't, not at the moment.
And honestly, sometimes I think you just don't, because the person experiencing it isn't willing to be humble and accept consequences and be able to look, I really, like I said, I believe that God is real. And I think that when we trust him, then he does what he says he will do and can take a horrible thing and turn it for good. But yes. I don't know.
The other person, the person in what, the direct individual has to be open to God. I'm dealing with that right now in my life. I won't go into details, but I have someone that just is so closed off to God, they can't see the good that continues to happen to them. All they're focused on is the bad. So.
Thanks for listening to 15 Minutes. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.